It is the second time. It is the second time we are presenting you this conference virtually, and with pandemic behind us now, we are hope to see you all in person the next edition onwards. A warm welcome to us, all our speakers who will share their business insights and experience with us. And I welcome Shanth Kumar, Director on the Board of WAN-IFRA and Director of the Printers Mysore Limited to the event. A special welcome to the keynote speaker of our event, Mr. Fernandez, who has joined us from Singapore. Welcome, Mr. Fernandez. A welcome to all WAN-IFRA members who have joined us from across South Asia. I welcome you all. I would like to give a glimpse of internet penetration and digital revenue in the region. As on today, we have crossed 300 registrations, which jump of more than 50% the last year's edition of this conference. In fact, the numbers are somewhere around 340. The numbers keep coming in this morning. And this goes to show the importance of the news publishers in the region and WAN-IFRA members in particular assigned to this conference and their quest for knowledge and ideas for digital news business. Now for the glimpses of the internet penetration and digital revenue, India has internet penetration of 825 million users as on date. There's a whopping 60% of the overall population. And interesting to note, of these 825 million internet users, more than 90% of access internet wirelessly and mostly via mobile devices. When we started Digital Media India conference 11 years back, the internet penetration was just about 200 million users. That's a growth of more than 400% over the years. This number is definitely set to grow further. If one thing the COVID-19 pandemic brought a positive change, it is definitely the growth in the penetration of internet to the hinterland of our country and the increased consumption of content on the net. And more than 65% of these internet users are young, with less than 35 years old. In terms of advertising revenue, digital media is estimated to be 40% of overall advertising spend in the country, and it is expected to become the largest earner of advertising revenue this year. It is no brainer that most of the digital revenue is not accrued to news publishers, but to other digital players. I'm sure it is in the minds of every news publisher pondering how to increase the share of the revenue in the pie in our favor. Several publishers worldwide have started looking at multiple revenue streams, and digital advertising alone is not enough to sustain our business. And now it is the best time to test our different strategies to benefit from this increased internet penetration and the revenue coming from digital. Our speakers today and the next 2 days will share their experiences and provide us ideas, inspirations to transform our business. Please do not miss out any of them. I hope you all have a fruitful conference. Please participate in the conference and send in a question to the speakers in the live Q&A box you will see in the right-hand side of your event portal. We look forward to engaging with all. Before I conclude, I would like to thank all our sponsors. Without their support, the conference would not have been possible. Our platinum sponsors, Google News Initiative, gold sponsors, Tibo DX, and silver sponsors, Evolok and Piano. We are grateful for their support. I'd like to thank all our supporting publications for supporting us in the event. Thank you all. Now we move on to the opening remarks. May I invite the Shanth Kumar, Director of the Board of WAN-IFRA and Director of Printers Mysore, for this opening remarks. Over to Mr. Shanth Kumar.
Thank you very much, Magdoom. Very good morning to all the participants who are online today. And I'll add my warm welcome to the Digital Media India 2022 conference that's happening, as Magdoom mentioned, for the second time online. This important conference marks the first event of WAN-IFRA worldwide calendar and acts as a guide, I would think, for the industry in the year ahead. In many ways, it sets the tone of things to come during the year for our industry. Therefore, I'm extremely pleased when I heard Magdoom tell us that we have more than 340 registrations for the event from across the South Asian region, from probably, I think 35 to 40 organizations, news organizations. This is an extremely encouraging response, which is, as he mentioned, more than 50% of an increase from the last conference. This clearly indicates not only improving business situation in this region, but also a more positive mood that's reflected in the news industry, which is a very welcome sign. As I see it today, the industry is definitely in a better shape when compared to a year ago. I think I can say with some measure of confidence that the worst of the pandemic is behind us. And though we may see spikes in infections in the future, the impact that they may have on life and business as a whole is unlikely to be as severe and debilitating as it was, as we have seen over the last 24 months. The economy is showing signs of growth. Most sectors of the industry, whether it be IT, pharma, automobiles, hospitality, among others, are doing well, relatively speaking. And this is already having a positive impact on our news business. And I'm confident that this trend will continue in the near and midterm. At the same time, there is, as we all know, there is some bad news. And I'm referring to the war that has broken out between Russia and Ukraine. And it's beginning to cast its shadow on the world economy. Sanctions and disruptions could result in spiraling prices and shortage of vital goods, especially oil, which we have seen is already going through the roof, which could push back the momentum that's been created thus far over the last few months. That this is happening just as the world is coming out of a difficult situation. It poses a great challenge, especially to our news publishing industry. I do hope the situation will ease sooner than later, and the growth rally of the economy will continue for the rest of the year. At this juncture, the Digital Media India Conference is of paramount importance, I think, for the opportunity it provides to learn about growing our businesses, the digital space, and to exchange ideas with industry peers. The digital business for us is growing in importance by the day, and I see it continuing in that fashion. The conference discusses ideas for digital revenue, for newsroom strategies, and technology needed to build our business, and more than that. We are delighted this morning to have Mr. Warren Fernandez, President of the World Editors Forum and Editor-in-Chief of the Straits Times Group, Singapore, who will deliver the keynote address to kick off this conference. He will enlighten us soon after this on the trends and predictions for 2022. I, for one, am eagerly looking forward to listen to him. After that, the panel this afternoon, where the CEOs of Indian media companies discussed their strategic focus for the year 2022, is a must watch. While we also have this morning and in the afternoon, learnings and lessons from North America, Australia, and more. Likewise, the sessions on day 2 and 3 will address subjects and issues like product thinking and change in the newsroom, engagement through video, digital subscription revenue, personalization, training of journalists, ideas for revenue beyond advertising, and of course, the newfangled non-fungible tokens or NFT and more. I think the conference program provides something for everyone to take back, and I'm eager to listen to them all. The next 3 days are not only packed with many interesting talks and discussions, but also has a great variety. I think I must congratulate the team at WAN-IFRA South Asia for putting together this such a varied and interesting program. And this will hopefully give us a sense of business going forward. I'm sure that it's going to be a virtual treat for all of us and provide plenty of food for thought. An important part of the conference is the presentation of the South Asia Digital Media Awards for 2021. That will happen tomorrow in the afternoon. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate in advance all the winners of these awards. This is a prestigious recognition of the good work done by the South Asian publishers on the digital front. Congratulations to all. Also, I think we've had an excellent participation in this competition, and which is also very encouraging. Thank you very much for participating to all the publishers. Finally, the conduct of any such event, as Magdoom mentioned, is impossible without the help of sponsors. Therefore, on behalf of WAN-IFRA and all the participants, I would like to express our gratitude to our sponsors. Their support has been a great source of strength for WAN-IFRA. And I would request the participants to please take time to check out their details in the websites, in the event portal, and if possible, interact with them virtually. For the moment, virtually, of course, and later otherwise as well. As for the rest of the year, WAN-IFRA has lined up several interesting programs of a great variety of interest to the news publishing industry. And I encourage all of you to please check the WAN-IFRA website for details and engage with us much more. And to end, I wish all of you a good conference, a useful and educating conference. And I encourage you to not only participate in the sessions and also interact among the participants. Thank you very much, and have a nice conference.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Shanth Kumar, for your opening remarks. And thank you for all the congratulatory messages to the team at WAN-IFRA. Thank you. Now we move on to the keynote address. Our keynote speaker is Mr. Fernandez. He will talk to us about the trends for 2022 and how SPH is shaping their business for the year. A brief introduction about Mr. Fernandez. He joined the Strait Times in 1990 as a political reporter and rose to become a news editor. He went on to serve as a foreign editor and a deputy editor. He then joined the Royal Dutch Shell in 2008 as a global manager for Future Energy Project before returning to the paper in February 2012 as its editor. He assumed the role of editor-in-chief of Singapore Press Holdings English, Malay, Tamil Media Group from July 2016. Fernandez graduated first-class honors from Oxford University, where he read philosophy, politics, and economics. He also holds a master's in public administration from Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government. And he is also the president of WAN-IFRA's World Editors Forum, the network of editors within WAN-IFRA. A warm welcome again, Varun, and stage is yours.
Thank you, Magdoom, and thank you, Shanth Kumar, for that introduction. And good morning to everybody attending the conference. I'm happy to hear we have more than 300 people, groups joining us this year, and congratulations to WAN-IFRA on the progress you're making. I was with you a couple of years ago in person in New Delhi, and I enjoyed the conference there. And I'm glad we're not letting COVID-19 get in the way of us connecting, despite having to do it virtually. And I'm really looking forward to being able to join you once again in person at the next available opportunity. But for today, we'll do this virtually. Here I am in my newsroom in Singapore, and happy to engage with you on this topic that Magdoom has presented to me to talk about the predictions and trends for 2022. It's always intimidating to try and predict the future, especially in the sort of situation we find ourselves in, with Shanth Kumar very, very well summed up in his opening remarks. And Magdoom mentioned that I used to work in Shell, where we did a lot of scenario planning. And with scenarios, you never try to sort of predict the future because it's always so fraught with difficulty. But what we try to do with scenario planning is work out possible paths to the future and possible narratives or storylines of alternative futures which might plausibly happen. And then you figure out, if scenario 1 happened, what would we do? And if scenario 2 happened, what would be the alternatives we might have to take? And in a situation like we have today, which is so uncertain, we try also to then figure out what would you do in common if any of those scenarios are played out. And I thought it'd be probably more helpful and more useful if I shared with you the kind of thinking, scenario thinking that we've done at SPH Media to deal with the uncertainties that lie ahead, which might then sort of be in some ways relevant to the thinking you might have to do for your own organizations. What we've done can't be directly translated to your own experience, obviously, because the circumstances, the context, the background is different. But there might be glimmers of aspects of it that might be relevant to you. and us having gone through the process, it might be useful for you to hear our experience and then apply it as and when it's relevant to you. So that's what I hope to do today, just take you through the journey of transformation we have been going through at SPH Media over the last couple of years, and then share with you some of the things we have concluded will be the path to the future for us as a media organization. So that's what I hope to do. Before I start, let me just wish everybody a happy International Women's Day. You know, WAN-IFRA and WEF were big supporters of that effort. And I was happy to see that the WEF Asia chapter has come together to collaborate and brought content together. So some of it is on our website, sharing interesting stories and content of how various societies around Asia are working together and collaborating to tell the story of progress being made on that front. So congratulations to the WEF Asia chapter for that effort. Let me go into my slides so we can get into the meat of the discussion now. Okay, I think you all see it on. Okay, so let me just dive in. As we started in the proceedings to talk about, this very troubled times with the war that's broken out, pestilence, and also the impact on prices and cost of living, all of which is playing out in all our societies. And I think that's the backdrop. We are over the hump with Omicron. In Singapore, it's cresting and coming down, and hopefully in a few weeks' time, we will have passed the peak. But you never know what will happen with this virus, which has been very tricky and has played tricks on all of us more than once. So we are keeping our eyes and minds open to what else might happen with this virus, and there could be further twists and turns. So that's a further element of uncertainty added to the war and rising costs, all of which, as we speak, we are grappling with the idea of what comes next in terms of the global order. What is going through Mr. Putin's mind, and what's his end game, and what are the possible outcomes that might have for all our societies, whether you're in India or China or in Singapore. Huge implications from all of that. So it's very difficult to say what this year holds. I think this year more so than any other year. And therefore, I thought it's useful for us to look at the context in which we are operating. What are our key challenges? Obviously, for audiences, the world is becoming more and more complex. Things are joined up and issues are multifaceted. And therefore, they are looking for trusted voices to help them make sense of these bewildering changes that are taking place all around them. And that's an opportunity for us, but it also is a challenge because audiences have so many more choices. And the idea that media organizations, traditional media organizations have in any way a monopoly of content or ideas is no longer the case, because audiences can go to many sources, and they are increasingly distracted, with social media and their phones and the proliferation of platforms and news sources. So that, I think, for an organization like ours in Singapore, SPH Media, becomes a huge challenge. How do we operate in a situation where we are no longer dominant, we are no longer the gatekeepers of information, and against that, this pandemic of fake news and misinformation and disinformation that's taking place. You would have all seen the misinformation and disinformation in the run-up to the Russian invasion and also in the last few days. And that's something we'll have to hoist in and deal with, because it's only the start and it's probably going to get worse in the months to come. As a result of that, societies are much more polarized, and issues become quickly polarized between different sides of the argument, and it becomes harder to have a serious, meaningful, civilized discussion. And that's not only within societies, it's also between societies as geopolitical tensions arise and increase. So all of that makes the role of the media increasingly important, but as we all know, our industry and the business model behind it is fundamentally disrupted. The reliance on advertising-driven models has changed, and we are all having to move increasingly into the digital space. But we know the challenges of the advertising revenue and how a lot of it is being taken up by the platforms. And we then have to find ways to monetize our content and keep the lights and on and pay our bills and keep our staff. So that's the context in which we are operating. Now, this to me is one of the biggest challenges we face, fake news, because I think we can all agree that we are entitled to our own opinions, but I don't think we are entitled to our own facts. And if we can't agree on what the facts are, what is black and what is white, how do we get into the gray areas where we have to make decisions and we have to discuss rationally and have a debate and try to fashion some sort of consensus on the way forward, whether it is in terms of dealing with COVID or finding a solution to the current crisis. And I would go further to say that without debate, without some degree of consensus on the basic facts, we can't have democracy. And you can't have a civilized, rational debate on the choices going forward. So to me, dealing with fake news and information is about saving our democracies and saving our ability to function as viable democracies. And that's why it is so important. Now, the research has shown that fake news travels further, faster, and goes deeper than real information. It tends to be more speculative, livelier, more controversial. It gets the emotions running. You've seen the fake videos that are coming our way, so it's hard to distinguish fact from fiction. You could have a video of me making a totally contrary statement and it would look plausible. So newsrooms have a challenge of how to distinguish fact from fiction, but let alone the audience having to make those distinctions. And it's not only fake news, it is deliberate misinformation and deliberate disinformation that we're seeing playing out around the world, which is a challenge, which is a role where I think media can step up and help society deal with. And then you have the COVID-19 experience, which I think all of us saw. At its height, audiences were seeking out trusted voices to help them figure out what was real and what wasn't, and what was the proper answer, which treatments to take, which vaccinations were sound and which weren't, and what were the risks. And I think across the board, all the research has shown that audiences turn to reliable sources of information. And that's where credible misinformation and helped forge support for public policy measures. The Prime Minister in Singapore recently gave a speech about Singapore's experience in getting on top of COVID-19, and my newsroom put together a book on it as well. And one of the things he said that helped us get on top of the situation was trust. Trust in our institutions, trust in our media, trust in our commentators, trust in our politicians, which enabled some difficult decisions to be made, helped get people together around the idea of vaccinations, and therefore enabled us to get vaccination rates pretty high, and therefore deal with the pandemic as it unfolded. And if you undermine that trust with misinformation and disinformation, then the house of cards can quite easily come tumbling down. This is the recent numbers from the Edelman Trust Barometer. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. And it shows, trust levels in major institutions, in this case, the media, but it's consistent across all institutions, whether it's government, the executive, judiciary. Trust levels are coming down generally. I think in India, you're doing well with 66% trust level, down slightly, 3 percentage points. In Singapore, we're at 59%, also down 3 percentage points. In the extreme left corner here, where you have high trust societies in the dark blue and Singapore in the middle blues, those high trust societies are ones where it's easier to have the discussion. But if you get into the red zone, where trust is not so high, then it's much harder to for the center to hold, so to speak, because your societies become much more polarized, and then the discussion around the gray areas become much harder. We can't even agree on what's black and what's white. There was another slide in the Edelman Trust Barometer, which looked at what was the one factor that made the most difference to trust levels, and it was information quality. The sense from audiences or from the people they polled in the quality of the information they were getting, the ability to sense that this was reliable, trustworthy, credible information, verified presumably by authoritative figures, by professional newsrooms, which made a difference in the scores that countries or societies had in the level of trust in their key institutions. And I think that's an opportunity for us in the media to re-establish ourselves as trusted sources of news, credible providers of information and views, and therefore have a place, a role to play in our societies and establish our newsrooms in that sense. So having done that scenario discussion in our organization, looking at the context in which we are operating, the changing business environment, the changing political environment, the changing geopolitical environment, we decided that our business model needed to change fundamentally. And we needed to shift from being a private limited company listed on the stock exchange, driven by largely or primarily by profits, and shift to a media trust model, which is focused on our core purpose, which is informing our societies, having reliable information, and then engaging in the debate and the discussion on key issues that we face collectively. So we have shifted our focus from profits to purpose, from shareholders to stakeholders, and there are many stakeholders, our audience being the primary one, our staff, our newsroom, the society, governments, newsmakers, they're all stakeholders, and their interests are as important as just shareholders. And we are moving from providing not just information, but we want to build up our ability to provide insight. And I think once you make that mental shift, it is a huge change in the way we think about what we're doing day to day, in terms of where we put our energies, where we put our time, where we put our resources. Now, it's taken us more than a year, almost 2 years, to go from where we wanted to be to where we are today. So we had to do a lot of consultation, a lot of engaging with the regulator, a lot of engaging with our shareholders. And we've been on that journey. We've split the company into two. One group being the media group, which is now called the SPH Media Trust and SPH Media. And the previous group, which was the Singapore Press Holdings, listed on the stock exchange, we've been separated into two. And effectively, the newsrooms have been taken out of the listed company, and we now operate as a trust, a little bit like The Guardian, a little bit like the Lensfest Institute in the US, with a focus not on profits. We are still commercially driven. We want to make profits. We've got nothing against being profitable, but every dollar of profits we make will be plowed into our newsrooms and our journalists and our journalism, because that's our core purpose. And we want to be focused with a laser light on the core purpose. So no more investments in properties and student accommodation and all kinds of peripheral activities. That's all gone. We're going to focus on the core mission, which in a way is, for me, liberating, because I can focus on what I enjoy doing most, and what I find most meaningful doing. And it helps our journalists as well know and have clarity of purpose and direction of what is it we're trying to do. And we've taken lessons from many of the big institutions around the world, like The Guardian, which also has a trust, a Scott Trust, many decades ago, studied their model. And we've decided that this is the model for us going forward, because we can then see a path to the future, which is driven largely by focusing on our key journalistic mission. So here I have for you, we've shaped our mission to be a trusted source of credible news, to help our counter misinformation and fake news, to connect our communities and foster trust amongst them, because we have a role to play in debunking fake news, in forging a consensus, getting the discussions going, engaging in the debate so that we can agree, we can disagree, but we can have a healthy discussion. And then lastly, we want to grow our international reach to provide a neutral, objective insight into what's going on in our part of the world, because there is so much at stake and so much at play in the rise of Asia, that we feel that we can be neutral watchers, neutral interlocutors to participate in that discussion. So that's the mission we've set for ourselves. Now, and we think that this is eminently doable, because today, competition is global. It's, you see all those names around on the slide. They are all operating in the international arena as well, and trying to grow and be global. And we feel that the digital space allows us to operate on a global platform. We're no longer confined to this little island that we have. We can operate in the international space, provided we give the audience meaningful and valuable content, which we believe audiences are willing to pay. It's about the value proposition. It is not so much about the cost. And if you look at some of the news organizations which are doing well today, they are the ones which are providing good quality, high value, and therefore being able to extract a premium from audiences. We believe we have trusted brands and titles. The Straits Times has been in the business since 1845, and it thrives, come what may, with competitors, different changes in regime, different changes in nationality, different changes in technology. And we've seen all that come and go, and we've ridden the waves, and we believe we can ride this one as well. And we think there is a market for objective insights on Asian affairs, not pro one side or the other, pro West or pro China or we provide a good objective, neutral point of view. And we believe there is tremendous goodwill to help us forge regional and global partnerships. And it is because we believe in all of these quite wholeheartedly that we've embarked on this journey. So our aspirations, quite simply, to make SPH Media a leading multimedia organization in Asia. We want the Straits Times to be the go-to source of content, obviously on Singapore, but also for the rest of Asia. Our Business Times, we hope, will provide a deep insight into financial developments and trends in Southeast Asia. Our sister newspaper, the Lianhe Zhaobao, has a big audience in China at the moment because it's trusted, it's credible, it's an alternative source to the state and domestic Chinese news organizations, and we want to grow that in China and in the region. And then we have two other titles, the Berita Harian and the Tamil Marasu, which are deep community titles. And for us, this was an article of a matter of principle. Because as you know, Singapore is a multiracial, multi-religious society, and we want to keep that going. So we could not contemplate a Singapore without a Malay title or without a Tamil news title and a separate newsroom to serve those communities. And it would be a completely different Singapore if we were only served in English or Mandarin. And having decided that as a matter of principle, we want to have a newsroom serving the Malay community, a newsroom serving our Indian community, connected with what's going on in their society, communities, and speaking up and voicing their interests and their concerns. We then have to say, okay, how are we going to build these newsrooms and staff them up and make sure they're well-resourced, and how do we have the funds to do it? And that's really why we've decided we've got to shift out of being just short-term, focus on shareholders and dividends, but really investing in the core purpose, which includes having these vernacular newsrooms. So we know where we want to go, having done the scenario planning. We know what is key, regardless of how the world changes around us. then the next question is, how do we get there? And we've had many discussions, but I would sum it up in the 3 Ps. We are focused on investing in our people, investing in our products, and then being very focused on investing in our purpose. Let me just touch on each of these in a little bit more detail. First of all, I believe, and my management has also given me full support with this, journalism is a talent business. We are not going to be able to deliver quality, value-added journalism and do all the things I've set out to, counter fake news and fight misinformation without good, talented journalists. And the demand for talented people to become journalists is relentless. And there's so many other things that young people these days could be doing with their lives if we as media organizations don't compete well to be able to hire. Not only to hire, hiring is the first challenge, but we need to be able to hold on to them so that they build affinity for the job, they grow in understanding of the issues, they stay long enough in the business so they can see through political cycles and business cycles and then write with authority on the subject. So for me, the big challenge is retaining talent, especially in a market like a labor market like Singapore, which is so tight. So one of the first things we did is to review our talent system, our pay scales, our retention rates, to move closer to the market so that we are competitive in the marketplace. Because as I said to my new chairman, if we don't win the talent battle, everything else we do is almost meaningless, because that's what it all turns on. So I was really happy when he signed on and said, okay, let's pay attention, let's get that done first. As part of our effort to retain talent, we've recently set up a new SPH Media Academy, and we are developing programs. I mean, we have a lot of in-house programs at the moment, but we're looking at all of them, re-looking at all of them to make sure they're fit for purpose in today's new media environment, strip out those that are no longer relevant, build those that are, and replace those where we need to build new skills, whether it is in video or audio or coding or whatever, interactive graphics. What are the new skills we need to build, and then build programs to deliver the outcomes we need. And not only build them ourselves, but work with partners. So obviously work with our friends and colleagues in WAN-IFRA, who has a plethora of interesting programs which we can tap into. Work with our partners in the Reuters Institute in Oxford, with Maria Garcia at the Columbia School of Journalism, and with the Point Institute. So we've signed partnerships with all of these organizations, or in the process of working out those programs. And I'll be happy to welcome any of you to join in our programs and collaborate and form partnerships to help us take this effort to develop our talent in-house, but also for the media industry in Singapore and for our part of the world. And secondly, we believe we need to invest heavily in our products, because that's what audiences will come to us and to pay. Here you see my young colleague, Christopher, who's smiling very, very serenely, because he's got a podcast which is doing very well on the charts and one of the best podcasts in our group. But we need to be able to develop new products which the young growing audience is interested in, and largely on their smartphones. And you need to have authoritative voices with expertise and the ability to interact with audiences, with interactive graphics, things they can play around and fiddle around with, and therefore stay engaged with us. So we're investing heavily to make our products best in class. So that includes the customer experience, the journey when they come to you to sign up, the user experience. All of these are aspects of the product, going well beyond just content, but how does the customer experience and engage that content? So heavy investments in the product. In order to do that, we have to invest in our technology to be able to deliver the new experiences through virtual reality and augmented reality. 5G is coming. How do we prepare our newsrooms for that? how are we preparing to make use of the new technologies to deliver content in new and engaging ways. And you can't do that if your technology is creaking and 20th century. We've got to get up the curve in investments in technology. And this is one of the reasons why we felt we had to move away from being a publicly listed company, because shareholders are short-term in their mindset and they want immediate dividends. But technology investments and technology paybacks take a very, very long time. And that's why we had to shift and therefore be able to invest huge amounts, many, many millions of dollars in building up our technology so that we can get to the position we feel we need to be in. Not only for today, but for the technologies that are coming, whether it's the metaverse and NTFs and all of those things that we have to move much faster to get in. And lastly, I would say we need to invest in engagements like the ones we are doing here virtually, but also live engagements. Here you see me engaging our Deputy Prime Minister in a forum where the audience gets to put questions to him. It's a forum about the way forward for Asia and ASEAN, but the audience doesn't want just to read us. They want to be able to engage with us and engage with our newsmakers, but also with our writers and challenge them and put a view to them. And increasingly, I think that's going to become a core part of what journalists do. The ability, the comfort level, the mindset to be willing to go out and engage, not just sit behind a computer in a newsroom, I think is going to be a key part of the way forward. So at the Straits Times, we are building this ability to do multiple engagements in many, many different shapes and forms. So this is what it means for our audience. At the end of the day, the focus is on the audience, right? We want to build and be that trusted, credible source where they say, okay, if I have doubts, I'm not sure who to believe or where reality lies, let me go to the source of news, which I've known all my life, I've grown up with, I trust. That's my default. That's what we've got to build. And we need to give them better products with better user experience. We need to go beyond information into analysis and insights that they value and are willing to engage with and trust. And we need to give them the sense that they are empowered to deal with the fake news and the scams and the misinformation that's being thrown with them, because we will give them the tools, we will give them the knowledge, the information to how to distinguish, what is real and what is not. And we want to do this across all our audiences, but with an especial focus on our younger audience, to give them the ability to understand statistics, to understand videos, to what to look out for when they're online, so that they grow up savvy and skilled in this new media setup that they're living in. And then I've mentioned we need to safeguard our cultures, our languages, our heritage. That's why we are investing in our vernacular newsrooms, and then sharing our perspectives and our insights and forging those global partnerships. If we do our jobs well, having made this transition, this is what we are hoping to deliver for our audience. Now, I thought I'd end with this pitch. I feel very strongly that newsrooms, having set ourselves this mission of being credible sources, sometimes we don't do enough to take that message to the audience and show them a little bit about what is it we do that makes a difference to their lives and to our societies and to our democracies. And this is what World News Day is all about. We've been building this effort to really go and engage the audience and show to them the difference a professional newsroom can make in building trust, in building credible information. And if we didn't have a professional newsroom, you would miss it. And I think that awareness is growing around the world. You see what's happening in Ukraine. Many societies had taken the eye off the ball in terms of investments in defense. And I think now many people are coming around to the view why you also need to invest in knowledge, in information, in newsrooms, in being able to have sources of information that is reliable and credible. So World News Day, last year we had close to 500 newsrooms participate in our efforts to tell the story of what happens in the newsroom and why it matters. Quite a good representation from India as well. I hope this year we'll be able to repeat it. We're going to do it on September 28th, in the middle of this year's World News Congress in Zaragoza. So it'll be a live event celebrating the work of newsrooms. I would encourage, I would urge newsrooms and partners from India to come forward and be part of this and celebrate the work that we do, showcase the connections you have with your community, the journalism that you are proud of. Share that with us, and we'll give you a global platform to tell your story as well. So please join us for this global effort. I leave you with this last parting thought, which is what underpins everything we have done for the last couple of years, and what is emblazoned on my wall in my office, that quality, trusted journalism is a public good. And that's why we are doing what we're doing. And I think if we are all focused on this idea that there is a public good that we're here to serve, and therefore shape our organizations to be able to serve that public good for that wider purpose of safeguarding our democracies, I think that would be the best thing we can do in the face of all these uncertainties that we're faced with this year and in the coming years. So thank you for listening, and I hope it's given you some useful ideas, some useful thoughts to think about and mull over, and maybe apply when you're doing your own scenarios for your own organizations. And I'll be happy to share or take any questions. And if there's anything you would like further information or insights on, please don't hesitate to email me or get in touch with Magdoom, and I'm happy to share, go deeper into any of those aspects. So thank you once again. Back to you, Magdoom.
Thank you, Aaron. It was a very nice presentation. I think you gave us a, whole world view of how things are changing and how SPH has taken this transformation. Right from scenario planning right up to what your aspirations are and so on. Fantastic presentation. We have just about 1 minute, so I'll just ask you one quick question before we move on to the next one. You mentioned about, the one thing that was really fascinated, the whole thing is how SPH, from being a commercial private limited organization to become a media trust. And there's a change that happened after several, maybe close to 100 years. So how was it taken? Quick answers on that.
A quick answer was, I think there was some uncertainty amongst our staff, because when they first heard the term not-for-profit, they assumed we were all going to become social workers and their salaries would be cut. So I had to spend a lot of time reassuring that nothing of the sort. We are focused on, we want to be commercially minded and commercially disciplined, and we will make profits as we have always done for the last 176 years, but focus it and reinvest in the newsroom. So one of the salary adjustments we've done in January is a commitment to them that we are serious about this. That's therefore we're putting money into the newsrooms. And I think that gives me sight to the future. Straits Times is 176 this year. I think with this change, I can see the path to our 200th anniversary. I hope we get there. Probably will be beyond my time, I hope. But without this transformation, it was harder and harder to see how we were going to secure the future. So I'm happy we've made this change.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We wish to see several more years with SPH and also with other media companies. And with this, we conclude the opening session. Thank you all. Thank you, Shanth, Kumar, and thank you, Aaron. So we'll see you again in some other forum. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I request